Hello, everyone. Connie Myers here. This is part of my Kickbutt interview series, and I am so excited. This is actually a redo of an interview that I did with this fabulous woman here a few months ago, but the audio wasn't very good, so we're trying it again. I want to introduce to you Pam O'Connor. She just retired a short time ago, but she was the president and CEO of leading real estate companies of the world. And it's such an honor. It's really an honor, Pam, to have you join me this morning.
Well, thank you, Connie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I hope you're enjoying retirement. I went on your website. It looks like you're staying pretty darn busy for being retired.
I am. Yeah. I'm working about maybe 35% of my time, which is just perfect. Still gives me lots of free time to do a lot of the things I never had time to do. So it's all good.
Sure. Yeah, you've done a fair bit of traveling, haven't you?
I've done a lot of traveling, although I think I'm about to lose my American Airlines Platinum status this year. So I guess I haven't taken enough long trips. But anyway, they're perfectly happy to take $1,500 to keep it, but I'm not sure about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you the first question I ask everybody. Were you a leader as a child?
I don't really think I was when I was a little girl. I was actually very shy, and but my dad was career Navy, and we moved a lot when I was younger, up until the time I was really in high school. And because of that, I think it forced me out of my shell a little bit. But I would say that really, in terms of leadership, maybe it started evolving a little bit more in high school, but not as a child, I don't think.
Yeah. I think a lot of us start from being shy and then something happens and we blossom.
Yeah. Well, when you're moving and going to a new school every year or so, which is what I did when I was up until the time I was really almost in high school, you're forced to, you can't be a total introvert. You kind of have to come out of your shell a little bit. So that's, I think, probably the impetus for whatever came later.
Sure. So, what was your journey like from that shy little girl to the president and CEO of leading real estate companies of the world?
Well, like so many of us in this business, we didn't really set out to do what we ended up doing. In fact, I used to host a visit to our office every couple of years with some of the students at my at the college where I went, University of Tennessee, and I used to say to them, be open to possibilities, because what you think you're going to end up doing may not necessarily be what it is. So, in my case, when I graduated from college, I came out, as I tell people, in those days, in the early 70s, women were either nurses or teachers or nuns or secretaries, and no matter what kind of a degree you had. And I definitely wasn't cut out to be a nun or a nurse. So anyway, I became a secretary, but I was in the field that I'd studied, which was journalism. I worked for a television station. But I think even though I compare myself now to my daughter, who's 28, and she's very focused, and I don't really think I was at that age, but I did know enough to just have this sense of that if I stayed in that role, I would have been that forever, and nothing wrong with it, but that wasn't really what I had in mind. So I ended up going to work for a real estate network called All Points Relocation Service after a couple of years at the TV station, really through a friend of a friend, and did that for 6 years. And then I didn't like some new leadership that had come into the company, so I left and was away for about 5 or 6 years with 2 different jobs. One actually a subsidiary of a major developers company, and then starting a PR firm with a gal I had worked with. So I did that, and then I was recruited to come back to All Points as their CEO, and I was only 35. And wow. I remember saying to the gentleman who called me, who was on their board, I said, "Oh, you can do way better than me. I don't know how to be a CEO. You need to look a little bit further." And I always remember what he said to me. He said, "Pam, if we have faith in you, you need to have faith in yourself." So that's how I ended up in my first CEO role, and then did that for about 10 years. And another network called Relo bought us, and my board was very kind to me. They told them that they would agree to sell it if they would make sure that I was the CEO. So they were looking out for me. And so I did that. And then around that time, shortly thereafter, moved to Chicago from Atlanta, which was where they were headquartered. And then I guess about a year and a half after that, the company that later became Leading Real Estate Companies of the World was formed. It was really a kind of a coming together of about 50 of the largest brokerages that had been part of the old PHH network, Cartus today, Realogy, along with the Genesis network, and then they merged with our network, Reload, and I ended up with that job. So, and I always tell this story to young women because I think it's really it's just a great lesson. When I actually got a call from the one of the founders of this new network, which was pretty significant, was really in the news at the time, and I was very flattered because he basically offered me the job over the phone. And long story short, it came together, and the merger of Relo and this group, and so I did end up with the job. And I remember asking him later, I said, I'm really curious. I had met you one time, but you didn't really know me, and you didn't even interview me, really. You just offered me the job. What was that all about? And his answer was something I've always remembered. He said, well, you're right. We didn't know you, but our relocation directors knew you from, a common group that we were part of that called ERC, that would be like the NAR of relocation. And he said, they all told us that you were the one we needed to hire. So the point of that is that you never know how things will come back to you. And, if you just treat other people with respect and all of that, it produces great rewards. So.
Well, I think that in explaining all of that, it's very important that it sounds to me like you obviously created an environment around yourself and others where people wanted to be a part and wanted to help to promote you.
Well, it's always about, if you make other people look good, they're going to help you, and you don't do it for that reason, but that's the outcome.
Absolutely. I think that's a really valuable lesson for anybody that's in leadership. Is it's not about you, it's about the people you support around you. Absolutely. So, well, I went onto your website. Well, first of all, you've been retired how long now?
About a year and a half from my day job. I'm really not totally retired, but from my day job, yeah.
Well, I went onto your website, PamO'Connor.com, and I was really impressed by the pictures you have in that do the spin thing. And I loved the words that you had for each picture. The first one is fill the gap. So when you say fill the gap, what do you mean?
We live today at a time when you don't have the whole climb the ladder, the corporate ladder hierarchy that we used to have. I believe it's Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In. She talks about it's more of a lattice today than it is a ladder. And so what I mean by fill the gap is that if no matter what job you're in, if you take on more than the job, actually entails, and you try to add value and you try to contribute and you take on more responsibility, hopefully you'll get promoted or recognized in that situation. But even more than that, I think you'll have a sense of your abilities and your capabilities, and you become more marketable no matter where you go. So fill the gap is just a little euphemism for saying, find out what's missing and see if you can help with that, whatever it might be, whether it's a project at work or some problem with your coworkers where you can try to step in and see if you can help solve that issue, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important. Many times we think, well, we don't have the ability to really take care of a problem or a situation, when in reality, we just might have the right answer. Absolutely. And along with conjunction with other people can come up with a really good solution. I think that's a really important part of leadership, is knowing, first of all, how to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take you a long ways in how far you go on that lattice.
Right. Sure. And you can be a leader no matter what your job is, if you
absolutely,
if you have that kind of an attitude.
Absolutely. Well, the next thing you say is plan ahead. And I think that might go along with another one you have on here, build the bench or build
Hmm.
a bench.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure that you didn't just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to retire now. Um, so how did you build your legacy, and how did you plan ahead and build that bench so that you could retire in a way that was satisfying for you as well as the people around you?
Hmm. Well, the plan ahead is just preparing for anything, no matter whether it's a speech you're delivering or a board meeting you're going to be at or whatever it might be. But the way it connects to the other the piece of build a bench is really all about succession planning, no matter what stage of your career you're in. Whether you own your company, whether you work for another company, you should feel a sense of pride in the job that you do, and you should, I think, feel some obligation to pass it along to someone else. And you can't do that overnight. It's a real process. It can take years, in fact. So part of the planning process is just to really obviously hire great people who are have the right raw material, but also people that you develop and you help them reach their potential, and then ultimately that becomes the bench that would replace you when you're ready to leave the job. In my case, I loved what I did. I could have done it forever, and I know a lot of people older than I am that are still working. So it wasn't certainly no pressure or anything to do it. But by that time, the people that I felt in the company would be the next generation of top leadership. They were getting they're still younger than I am, but they were approaching late 40s, early 50s, and I thought it's not fair to them to just keep hanging around. That they needed the opportunity that I'd had since I was 35 years old, and they're wonderful people, very talented, and good friends. I had dinner with my successor last night, as a matter of fact. And so what I really set out to do, probably 3 years before I ultimately retired, was to really try to figure out what was missing in terms of coaching, executive coaching, filling in a few voids that we had with positions so that it would free these people up to take on bigger jobs. And so it was really a whole process. I had some leadership coaching in the course of that, and from my good friend Mike Staver. And one of the best pieces of advice he gave me was, he said, you love what you do, so you can't be thinking about this in terms of what you're leaving. You've got to think about what you're going to, and start trying to paint a picture of what your life after your day job will look like. And that's exactly what I did. So one of the things I am most proud of, seriously, in my whole career, is how smoothly that transition has gone. The company's doing great. My successor, Paul Boomsma, is doing a wonderful job. Stephanie, Anton, the whole team there, and we hired a few new people to kind of fill in, who were Kate Reisinger, Jessica Edgerton, and they're doing a great job. So it's just really rewarding, and I encourage people in our business to be methodical and thoughtful about succession planning, because you can't do it overnight. In my case, I had a couple of the people in line. We hired others, and otherwise you wake up one day and you're 80 years old and you go like, oh my gosh, I need to exit, and there's nobody there to do it. So that's you should always be building that bench, and never be threatened by that, because the sign of a good leader is developing other people. It's not just being strong
Absolutely.
yourself.
Absolutely. So, what is the best part about being retired? What's your passion today as far as moving forward?
What I love about it, and it's funny, I think women, for some reason, deal with this better than men. I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day who's really struggling with retirement, a male friend. And but the thing I love most is really being able to be selective about what I do, and also not being on that treadmill 24/7, where you can actually, um, you know, read up on something that's going on and not just get sound bites, but really study it. So I'm still very involved in the industry, and I really keep up with it. And I think I can delve into things in a way that I didn't have the time to do before. And obviously, seeing friends and family, I travel a lot for both business and pleasure, and I'm able to keep up with everybody. So it's been great. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's funny, I've been on this journey of mine this is the 8th year now since my husband passed away. And people ask me, well, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, I am retired. I mean, I'm living my passion. And I think
Yeah.
when you find out what your passion is, you're absolutely right. You have time now. You have
Yeah.
time to take on the issues you want to take on, pass on the issues you don't want to take on, and have time for yourself to really understand what's next for you. The thing
Yeah.
is, I do something every Saturday called Just 70 and Beyond, and it's just a short, like usually it's about 10-minute commentary. I do Facebook Live where I talk about just anything that's happened that week or something that I feel is an important conversation to have. Well, when I was working before, I certainly never had time to even give that thought, much
Yeah,
less do it.
yeah. Well,
And
I used to, obviously, I had great relationships with our affiliates, and many times I would get calls from brokers asking for help hiring a particular position or helping them, sometimes sell their company, all sorts of things. Well, now, I mean, I do a lot of that for pay, actually, but really more than that, there are times I can just spend an hour with somebody on the phone and help them when I didn't have the luxury of doing that. So when you ask about what my passion is, I love this business, and I love helping people do well in this business. And I guess my biggest beef is people that are, play the victim card and everything that's bad and all of this, instead of realizing what an amazing business we have. And, the quote disruptors come along all the time, and we always survive. The strong always survive. And I think sometimes we just have to have that faith in ourselves. So that's kind of cheerleading, I guess, if you call it a passion, is what I have for the brokers and the agents in this business.
well, you're such a respected voice in this industry,
Yeah, thank you.
and I think that when you speak, people want to listen because everything I've ever known about you, and I haven't known you all that long since. Well, I think the first Awesome Female, so I guess it's maybe been 10 years.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
But the thing that I've always admired about when you speak, I mean, you speak from your heart. And I think that's probably why you had the amazing success that you had, is because my guess is you always spoke from your heart.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you do it, but yeah, I call it authenticity or whatever, but I think people can sense when you, are really interested in them. And I always say curiosity is such a great trait, because if you're interested in other people, you'll be more interesting to them, so it's just sort of thinking about it in those terms.
Absolutely. So besides traveling, what do you do for fun?
Um, Honestly, I have tons of friends, and so I'm either hosting somebody at my place, or I'm visiting or traveling with them. I've done, I'm getting ready to head to Florida and New Year's Eve day for a little over a month, to part of the time staying with a friend, part of the time renting a house and hosting a lot of other friends. Then I'm heading shortly after that to Australia, New Zealand for about almost a month for a trip, going on that with some friends. I'm actually, next summer, I'm doing a writer's workshop with my friend Matthew Ferrara that he does every year in Florence. Again, something I never had time to do. So I'm doing that with a couple of friends in the business that'll be there as well. And so a lot of it is travel related. My daughter's in New York. I spent a week there a few weeks ago helping her move. So there's always something. And the other thing that I'm a little bit embarrassed about, because I have not been as attentive to it lately, so I've been busy, but I am writing a book. I'm up to about chapter 10. It's a fiction book, but it's set in residential real estate. So
I love it.
So anyway, that is something I need to, be able to get back and focus on so that I can get that moving down the road a little bit.
People don't realize how long it takes to write a book.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's one of those things, it's a momentum thing. My friends who have written books say you've got to do it every day. Well, I haven't been able to figure out how to do that because sometimes I'm either traveling or just don't have other work that I've got to get finished. So I haven't been as diligent. But that when you get into the groove and you really get some momentum going, then I can whip out quite a bit at a time. So I just need to get back into that kind of mindset.
Right. Yeah, you definitely have to have the right mindset. And like this book that this interview is going to be a part of, it's going to be called Crystalline Voices, Real Estate Women in Leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working on it now for about 2.5 years. So it's been a thing of passion. But my favorite part is being able to talk to just incredible people like yourself. So I really appreciate you taking the time to participate in my book. And I cannot wait. You have to let me know when you're ready to announce your book, and we'll do another interview. So I would love to hear more about it. So good luck with that. And thank you so much for any last piece of advice you'd like to give to, say, a broker that is thinking about retirement.
Just realize that you do have a legacy. No matter what you do, there are things that you've been successful for a reason, and you've created something that hopefully you want to continue. And sometimes if you own the business, maybe you have kids in the business, maybe you don't. I recently wrote a succession planning course for California Association of Realtors, which I think is probably just about to come out. And, I address not only, having what you do if you have children in the business, but what happens if you don't, passing it on to non-family members, how you can do that. Also, whether you just maybe are going to sell the company, the best ways to go about doing that. So I kind of covered the gamut of what different forms of succession planning. But I think the best advice is what I mentioned earlier. Don't think about what you're leaving. Think about what you're going to, and really design a future that is fun, where you can, perhaps still keep your hand in the business, because I think our retiring people have a lot to offer. There are a lot of new people in the business, and they're very talented, and they'll bring skills from other industries that will be incredibly valuable. But at the same time, there's real value in the legacy and the history of knowing what's gone before, and relationships and how those have evolved. And so I think you can leave your day job, as I call it, and still contribute to the business in other ways, while also taking time for yourself and enjoying your friends and your family and your hobbies and all of that.
Absolutely. I think that's really, really great advice. That look at it as where you're going to go next. What's the next chapter in your book, in your life's book. So, well, Pam, I thank you so much for taking the time, and I really, really appreciate this conversation. I think it's a really important one, because many times we don't think about our legacy. When we're in our 30s and 40s, we don't think that we have a legacy. We're still thinking about where we're going to go. And I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it changes and evolves, and new people that are there after you go have a different way of doing it. But whatever you've instilled in them, those basic values and philosophy, often continues, and that's the legacy we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. And everyone, I hope that you've really enjoyed this conversation. She has a lot to offer. She's an absolutely wonderful lady. So if you ever get a chance to meet her in person, or if you know her, you know what I'm talking about. So thanks so much, Pam. And we will be back with another amazing interview coming up. I think it's next week. So I'll have to look at my calendar. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining us, and reach out to Pam if you need some assistance in legacy.
Thank you, Connie. I appreciate it.